When my child was just a few years old, a friend casually asked me, "What would you do if your child says that they are gay?" I looked at my friend and I just wondered, what would I do? Nothing. I would love my child just as they are, and I would stand by them come what may. In those days, this is the 1990s, not much was known about the LGBTQ community. In fact, everybody, and including me, I only knew the term gay. I didn't have the right vocabularies. I didn't know what sexual orientation was. I didn't know anything about transgender people other than just the Hijra community whom we used to see at the signals begging or clapping hands. Today, it's a different story. My name is Anupama Easwaran, and I'm going to be talking to you about Pride Takes Lead. I'm a diversity and inclusion consultant and a very strong and proud LGBTQI and especially a transgender ally. So since this incident happened with my friend, one would like to think a lot has changed and there's been a lot of progress. There has been progress, but I wouldn't say the progress has been at the pace that it should have been. A few years back, in fact, just before the reading down of Section 377, a friend narrated a story. She told me how her cousin's fiance called off the wedding, stating that he is gay. My friend, her cousin, the entire family was shocked, hurt, and very angry. They felt that they were not treated fairly. But I thought, isn't this good? The man had actually very courageously come forward and told about his sexuality and saved 2 lives. That marriage would not have worked. But the man's family also did not accept him. And ultimately, he had to leave home. I don't know what's happened of him, but I do hope that he's happy and in a loving relationship. I like to think that maybe one of the big reasons for such discomfort, this kind of homophobia or transphobia, is because of lack of awareness. We still don't speak openly and adequately enough about sex, sexuality, or gender. Ideally, sex education programs in school should have more conversations on sexuality and gender. But till date, most Indian schools don't have a holistic sex education program. They're often conducted as a tick mark exercise. When I've spoken to so many queer people in the last 7 years of my work in this space, most of them have spoken about how they have been bullied during their primary and secondary school education. Peers have bullied them. They have teased them about their mannerisms, their style of walking, their style of behaving. Even teachers who should actually be mentors and who should guide and create, and it's their responsibility to create a safe educational space, they have not stood by them. There was a study done on bullying based on sexual orientation and gender identity by UNESCO and Sahodran, which is an NGO in Chennai, with a study group of 377 people in the age group of 18 to 22 years. And this study group belonged to the transgender and men having sex with men community. And the study revealed very harsh and alarming data. It reported that 60% of the students had faced bullying in middle or high school. 43% were sexually harassed in primary school. And 18% reported instances of abuse by school authorities. 70% of these people suffered anxiety and depression, and they lost focus on education. And 33% dropped out of school due to bullying. We are a country of 1.4 billion population. There is no data of LGBTQ community. The last census, which was done in 2011, enumerated that there are approximately 5 lakh people who belong to the transgender community. This is a very conservative number, and probably The reason why this is conservative, or the fact that we don't have data on LGBTQ people, is because a lot of them don't still feel comfortable coming out and stating that they belong to the LGBTQ community. We haven't yet created an environment where people from the LGBTQ community feel safe and confident to come out and be who they are. As per a report of Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, the Government of India, titled Youth in India 2022, youth comprises of 22.7% of India's population. If amongst this population, we have, and I'm sure we have, a lot of people who belong to the LGBTQ community, and we are not sensitive, we are not creating a safe place for them, you can just imagine the number of dropouts that we would have and the kind of talent pool that we are going to lose out on. One would think that these kind of data and figures would wake us up and we should start doing something. Unfortunately, we still don't see as much action. Sometime back, there was a fairness cream advertisement which showed a same-sex couple celebrating Karwa Chauth. This ad company was forced to withdraw the ad stating that this is against Indian culture. And I thought, really, it's interesting that we have temples like in Khajuraho, which clearly depict existence of same-sex relationships and the fact that they were accepted. We have Kama Sutra, which also shows same-sex relationships. It shows existence of trans people. There are mythological stories in various religious contexts also, which have references to transgender people and same-sex relationships. Yet today we talk about the fact that people from the LGBTQ community are celebrating same-sex relationships or having trans people amongst us is against the Indian culture. How is that possible? How did we get misled so badly? Britishers introduced Section 377 in the Indian Penal Code that criminalized same-sex relationship. They also categorized transgender people as criminals, and they were pushed to the peripheries of the mainstream society. In 2013, Britain, the country that actually introduced Section 377, legalized same-sex marriage in their own country. India, we finally read down Section 377 only in 2018, and we are still fighting to legalize same-sex marriage. The NALSA judgment in 2014 recognized transgender as a gender. And in 2019, the rights of transgender people got framed under the Transgender Person of Protection of Rights Act. However, even today, they remain visibly invisible community. We hardly see representation of LGBTQ community in our educational institutions, in our workplaces, in our homes, in our society, right? Amongst you, look around you and see how many of your classmates, your colleagues belong to this community. Don't you think it's high time that we changed? Don't you think it's time that we make space for the progress pride flag to unfurl and fly freely? I am today a proud LGBTQ ally and a trans ally. And this didn't happen overnight. In 2016, a client of mine approached me and told me that they wanted to hire a transgender person who's a postgraduate. I said yes. I didn't know how I'm going to do it. I didn't even know anything about the transgender people at that point. All I could see immediately and visualize was people at the signal begging or clapping. But I knew instantly that, I have to make a change. This is where I'm going to contribute towards a mindset shift in society. I took on that challenge. And one of the first things that I did was to educate myself, to understand what I didn't understand, right? So I began by approaching people who were um, working in this area. I reached out to friends who had done research projects in this area. I read books. I listened to various YouTube videos, talks. And in the course of all this, I met a lot of wonderful people who actually landed up being my biggest educators. Their lived experiences, their day-to-day sharings is what actually transformed me and helped me understand the community better. And to stand here today in front of you, sharing more about the LGBTQ community, hoping to influence you to also become allies. The first step in this change that I'm talking about is actually for each one of us to build that awareness and education about the LGBTQ community. The basic concept of sex, sexuality, and gender, which should ideally be taught to us or explained to us in our school days, primary, secondary school, is something that we all can start even today. Sex is something that is assigned to us at birth based on our anatomy or our physiological characteristics. So if you're born with a penis and testicles, you are assigned a male child, and if you're born with a vagina, you're assigned a female child. There is a third variation, which is intersex. These are children who are born with sexual organs which are not clearly defined. Sexuality is whom am I attracted to? And gender is whom do I identify as? So that's sexuality is with my heart and gender is with my mind. Normally, if you're assigned a certain sex, it's almost assumed that your gender is also going to be as per what is socially known. For example, if you've been assigned a male child, you are assumed to have masculine interests, you're assumed to take on in the role of being masculine, like to wear male clothes, to wear pants, shirt, take up professions, games, etc., which are considered in the social norms as masculine. Similarly, if you're assigned a girl, a female child, then it's assumed that you would want to be feminine and that you would take up your expression as being feminine, you would take up activities that are socially considered as feminine or womanly. I, for example, was assigned a female child at birth and I was brought up as a woman, as a girl child. Today, I'm a very happy, a very proud feminine woman. But do you know, even amongst all of you, there could be somebody who was assigned female at birth, but never identified as being a woman or anything feminine. They felt that they are a man. Similarly, there could be somebody who was assigned a male at birth, but never identified as a man, but more as a woman. These, my dear friends, are the transgender community. They feel trapped in a wrong body. They are forced to live a life which they do not identify as. For the longest period of time, they themselves are confused as to what is happening with them. At a very early age of 5-6 years, a trans person realizes there is something wrong. There is a mismatch, but they're not able to identify it because at that small age, you can imagine that one has no vocabulary to even describe what one is feeling. That sense of discomfort is largely termed as a gender dysphoria. By the time the child hits adolescence, this dysphoria gets heightened. Family is unable to explain. The child is unable to explain to the family members, and often the child gets lost in this whole turmoil of what is to be done. If all of us are better educated, are more aware, we can help our own peers, our family members, who probably identify as being part of the LGBTQ community. When I started educating myself about the LGBTQ community, I also realized that I play such an important role also as an ally. And that realization came when I met one of the persons who belongs to identify as a trans woman. I met her to understand more about the transgender community. We were sitting at one of the cafe coffee days, and after our meeting, which was a regular kind of a meeting, when we got up to leave, the cashier came up to us and said, "Thank you, ma'ams. Look forward to seeing you again." And I saw the pleasure and the surprise on the face of this person. Today, she is a dear friend of mine. Her name is Abhina, and she is a national and an international level transgender activist. At that moment in Cafe Coffee Day, I realized what it means to be an ally. When I normalize, when I am just as I would be with any other person, I convey a very strong message all around me that this is the right behavior, this is the normal behavior, this is how one needs to interact. That day, I unconsciously, I was inclusive, and I realized the power that I hold to influence that level of inclusion. Since then, I have not looked back on this responsibility that I took on. Till date, today I sensitize corporates, institutions, society about the LGBTQ community with an aim to create an equitable world for them. Each one of us needs to be intentional in our efforts to be inclusive. Love is love. There is no boundary to it. It is meant to be seamless. Thank you very much.